Hi, you join me at the AFL Open Nationals for 2025. This year we are going from state level to national league, baby. We're covering the big time. This is the National Wheelchair Championships for Australia. There are so many reasons why I'm excited for this one this year. This is the first time I've actually been to cover a proper sporting event, so this is going to be huge. So we have got a lot to get through today. Full team analytics of their performances in the championship so far, reviews of the finals, an in-depth look into how some of these league systems operate state to state, interviews with some of the players. We have got it all. I've even somehow managed to jag a spot on national sports coverage calling one of the games. I don't know how the hell I've done that. Thanks to Bailey and Austin, who have been absolutely incredible, and thanks to everyone who's run this tournament. But without further ado, let's get this thing underway. So let me talk you through all the teams who are going to be here. Firstly, you have the South Australians, and they are looking colossal this year. I'm doing this after the first day of the tournament has already happened, so obviously I've got a bit of a spoiler alert, but they came in with the strongest team that they've had in years, according to their coach, Guillaume Dan, and they have absolutely proved it. They've run over the top of Western Australia and Victoria, who are both very, very strong sides. This is a very, very well-balanced all-around team, and a lot of familiar names here if you followed the series so far this year. All of these players that you see listed here are top 11 in League Vault this year, so absolutely the right names to be called upon. Then we have last year's champions, Victoria. This is a longer squad list, of course, being the home team, but that means they've got plenty of rotation, and if things go wrong, that means they've got so many insurance policies, and things already have gone wrong. James Weinert's been injured, Tisha Shadwell's been injured so much she's been forced into a very premature retirement, and Sean Groenewegen is unavailable, of course, the man who I thought probably should have been best on in the VFL Grand Final. But they have the man who won that award, Seb Welsh, as well as his forward partner in crime and premiership winner in Ryan Smith, as well as Nick Bryan, and just a host of other names who have made the Victorian League their own over the last few years. There's a reason why this team have won the last 3 competitions and are shooting for an outright record 4th competition win in a row. Western Australia's base is built on some very experienced players from previous competitions. Ben Green, Amber Merritt, both providing fantastic service to this side so far 4 years, and have continued to do so already in this tournament so far. Then we have a big new rising star on the horizon, Ben Moncrief. One of Cooper Spillane's teammates in the youth wheelchair basketball teams. He has been absolutely imperious so far. Just huge body, great movement, versatile, has played every position so far this tournament. He could be the one to lead this WA team over the top and win their first wheelchair national tournament. Speaking of stars that are rising, Tasmania. They have had a brilliant last year and a half in football terms, not only getting their own AFL team, asterisk, but bringing that branding and that attention to the wheelchair game. This is the first tournament so far where we've seen the Tassie Devils brand, and it is absolutely fantastic. And they are following on from this squad here, getting 2nd place overall last time around. This is a team that, if you underwrite them, if you undervalue them, will absolutely wipe you off the table. Watch for Tasmania this year. They will be in Div 1 contention once more, and if others aren't careful, they will grab their way through to the final. New South Wales have had a massive resurgence at state levels, as we will get into later on with an interview with the New South Wales players. They have had a massive fundamental change in the way that their system works over the last year, and it is already paying off dividends. They have scared powerhouses this tournament so far, and with a squad that's looking pretty deep all around, they could scrape their way into Division 1 and really damage a few of the power teams' egos. There is a very strong Morningside flavour to the Queensland team this year for very good reason. That Morningside team could be one of the very best state wheelchair sides going around this year, going undefeated in the Queensland League with no one particularly getting close. Paul Letters will be hoping to lead his Queensland team to Division 2 glory this year and maybe even break a few Division 1 hearts along the way. This, when it's on, is a fully cohesive unit, and although missing the leading goal kicker of the season in Michael Dobby Bridges, there is enough about this team on all levels to really frighten the best of the best. The Northern Territory, to the delight of everyone, are making an appearance at this year's Nationals, and they're injecting a sense of fun and creativeness into the competition. They have a list that doesn't have a whole lot of experience at this level, but this will be a very important year for them as they build the experience against some absolute power teams. And if they take these lessons learned to heart, they will build, like other nations, like other states have, to greatness in future years. The returning Services League are returning once again for another tournament. They were in the final of Div 2 last year and got very close to beating Queensland. This year, with players from all across the nation with experience in their own respective state leagues, including some names here which may be familiar to you if you've watched the series going on about the SNFL stats this year, they have some very talented players and some handy depth. With brilliant squad cohesion, could these guys and girls go all the way and win the Div 2 title this year? South Australia took a lot by surprise as they used the side described as their best in 5 years to go completely undefeated and pretty much unchallenged throughout the whole Lightning Carnival. Victoria ended the first day in some strife but turned things around to finish strongly with a powerful statement win in the final game against the Tasmanians in an otherwise dead rubber match that decided second place. Western Australia didn't perhaps look as purely strong as prior years for reasons I'll touch on later and sat 5th with one match to go. They secured the win that they needed and pinched 4th and thus the final Division 1 spot over New South Wales, whose narrow loss to Victoria was the deciding factor. Nonetheless, it marked a huge improvement over the prior year and they finished a win over a 6th placed Queensland. The RSL took a while to get going on field but nabbed a win over the Northern Territory, which consigned the Territorians to being the last seed for the finals. How the finals worked was that the league was split in two, the top 4 competing for the Division 1 crown and the rest fighting for the Division 2 cup. I'll start with Division 2, and I was lucky enough, thanks to Bailey White and Austin Kruger, both absolutely fantastic pillars of the Victorian wheelchair football community, to make my KO broadcasting debut in the first semi-final between Queensland and the RSL side, and I still cannot believe that happened. So thank you so much to Bailey and Aussie for helping sort me out there. The RSL defence held valiantly in this game, but in the end Queensland proved far too strong. New South Wales also cantered to a victory over the Northern Territory, using the game to trial some tactics which would prove pivotal come the final. Now, I'm going to go through these finals in some level of detail, so if you haven't watched them and would like to, please do so. They are both fantastic and close games, really representing the great things about the wheelchair game in different ways. So check them out. They're on the AFL Play YouTube channel, or I think they're still up on KO Freebies. Go check that out. The only caveat is you'll have to hear my voice a bit more often, so swings and roundabouts. This grand final was one of the more tense matches I've seen in the wheelchair code. New South Wales captain Toby Popple had been ruled out for the whole of day 3 with a hand injury and started the final on the bench, which gave space for the 15-year-old Jai Kumba to make his mark in his debut national, scoring 2 goals to give the Blues the lead at the first change. Then the free-flowing game turned into a defensive arm wrestle. Only 4 behinds were scored, all by Queensland, in what would prove to be a theme in front of goal for them in this match. Brad Burns was particularly impressive for New South Wales, repelling attacks in tandem with a switching combo of Lewis Richards and Matt Hannon. Queensland's defence was, if anything, more impressive, goose-egging their southerly rivals with the combo of the quick skipper Zach Carlson and Olympic silver medalist Alison Mosby, both proving imperious. Despite going scoreless, the Rolling Rams would hold the lead until deep into the third. They scored just the 1 Popple behind, while Dan Scott overcame missing his first 7 shots on goal to finally grab a major and a 2-point lead in the only other score of another tight quarter. Victoria Simpson was added to the game in this term down back for New South Wales and kept the general level of defence very high indeed, picking up a defensive win and plenty of other fine contributions besides. The final term was completely different. It only took 5 seconds for Ahmad El Hadj Yusuf to break the Rams' goal drought of 2 and a bit quarters. Queensland then missed a couple of chances, including a narrow miss from Scott, which precipitated my best call of the entire week, which I'm unashamedly going to play in full.
It has been an almost kind of afternoon That's almost an understatement. He could have had about 10 goals.
Oh, absolutely 100%. 3 goals, 8 right now for Queensland, and that is the most pivotal number as El Hadj Youssef comes up towards the goal, an open run. And that's his second. He has broken this game open. Accuracy problems have stifled everyone except the man who's come on in the last and broken this thing to pieces. Could that be the burst of adrenaline that powers New South Wales towards the title?
I was really happy with that. Anyway, Scott redeemed himself soon after and cut the gap to 2. The intensity increased to maximum with players taking huge tumbles. From the resulting ball up after this one, young Coomber combined with Burns and O'Connor in a fantastic series of passes, finding space to score again. Queensland wouldn't go away though, Scott presenting and missing yet another chance, but a very tough one. Unfortunately for the Maroons, the Rams once again took the kick out all the way to the house, Coomber slamming home his 4th despite pressure from Carlson. Scott though began to dominate up front and converted 2 quick chances to cut the gap to 1 point with mere seconds left. Popple comes up clutch, sharking a Boyle tap and giving New South Wales possession. They wouldn't surrender, which, combined with an unlucky but ultimately meaningless 5-metre penalty by Carlson with 5 seconds left, gave Popple one final shot which he used to seal the game. The side's joy unable to be masked as they rolled out 7-point winners. Now, I believe Toby Popple was given the player of the match for this game with 22 touches, 15 marks and 6 forward entries, which he deserved for his tournament overall and kicking the sealer after nearly breaking his hand the 2 days earlier. That's one hell of a story. However, Josh Boyle played the game of his life, amassing over 200 StatFeeder ranking points, 43 touches, 7 intercept possessions, 9 forward entries, which included 6 assists, and that would have been even more if not for the Queensland conversion issues that they had. Carlson also had a blinder with 14 forward zone entries and 12 rebounds, however poor disposal efficiency did let him down. Chris O'Brien guided the Rams to victory with less touches than Boyle, but 3 intercept marks, 8 rebounds and 3 contested wins were huge, valuable contributions. Swingman Brad Burns chipped in with 4 assists and 9 rebounds, providing some fantastic dash from the half-bank line, while El Hadj Youssef's cameo didn't light the stat feeder board on fire, but 2 goals from 2 touches in a low-scoring game, well, that made a difference. Now, the Division 1 finals. South Australia ended up cantering home in what was a close match for 3 quarters against WA before fatigue set in for the Western Australians, while Victoria pretty much kept Tasmania at arm's length in their semi from the start, with Yassine Hill scoring 7 first-half goals at least. I ended up losing count. His final tally's probably up here, if I can be bothered to edit that, assuming that I'm on the right side again. Their third-place final was a pretty good affair, WA rolling out winners by 17 points in a pretty close match that showed a lot of heart from the Western Australians. And the final, well, I don't really want to talk about this game much because I don't think I can do it justice. Seriously, watch it. The link's in the description and I'm fairly sure there's a thing up here or here if I'm at all competent. Click it, watch it now. This is your final warning before the spoiler alert. Okay, 3, 2, 1... You've had your chance. Okay, it was close all game. The South Aussies having the lead for most of the game, but it only ever went to a maximum of 14 twice, and each time it did, the Victorians would score a flurry of goals to take the lead, not just reeling it back, but getting a gap themselves. The second time it happened was in the last. Smythe misses a long ranger, and the Vics hurry it up the ground to score through Yassine Hollywood Hill. The man with the best nickname in wheelchair footy, or at least the best nickname that I didn't come up with, then scored the next 3 goals to round out a haul of 9, one of which came as a result of a weird play that showed the difference between a champion team and an incumbent contender. Seb Welsh is pinged for a brave but correct holding the ball call, playing on about 3 inches from goal. Yaz Hill then cleverly plays the pest on the mark, and Cooper Spillane, masterful all-tournament, falls for the bait, not giving himself enough room, missing the forest for the trees, and not missing Hill's outstretched arm. Hill then gains possession and is taken high in a desperate whip-bred tackle. Hill goals, the gap was 10 points after that. And then my boy, Stewie Webster, outmarks the superb defensive pair from Victoria of Hayden Auber and Judeland Anthony, and here's where I have to pause it. On the mic, I noticed that Cooper Spillane is being shifted forward in what could be a masterstroke tactical move that could win the game for SA. However, I don't want to interrupt the call of the shot from the superb Austin Kruger. So, I say this to cover.
Webster. Oh, and this is interesting. Oh, sorry, I'll refer to the substitution that's just happened after this goal.
In my defence, no one has scored more goals this tournament than Webster. He's kicked 47 goals, 6, not counting their Queensland match, which I haven't seen. He's the most accurate volume shooter by far this week, from a distance charitably describable as a soda. But because I'm an idiot and say idiotic things, what happens next, I have to take the blame for. For the second time in 3 minutes, a pivotal SA kick cannons into the man on the mark. A point is scored, Victoria take possession, they do not relinquish it, and an after the siren Hollywood Hill miss, which would have been for his 10th, brings the final margin to 10. So yeah, I did this. And look, there's no guarantee that SA would have gotten the next clearance if Stewie had have scored, not least because forward turned mid Ryan Smith handily won the ruck duel that day, but I cost us the chance. Sorry, boys. However, I did later spare my own blushes. Listen to this.
BOG today. Oh, I mean, it's hard to go past a nine goal haul from Big Hollywood, but I think Hayden Norber, I mean, I'm a big defensive guy, but I think he had so much influence in the transition play coming forward and he did nullify a lot of the threats, so I'd go with him.
And what do you know? Hayden Norberg not only goes on to win the Kevin Faulkner medal for BOG, but registered the most stat feeder points in the game, which goes to show my eyes and my spreadsheet do occasionally know what they're doing. Orber racked up 37 touches and 4 goal assists from the back line, rebounding it 10 times and generating 13 forward zone entries. Even though he lost 5 one-on-ones, every other aspect of his game was elite. With his 170-something points, I changed the formula slightly before recording this, which was a dumb move, just outstripping Ryan Smith, whose ruck craft and 6 defensive pick blocks, which is a new stat category that I tracked this tournament, complementing an all-round performance. Jude Anthony had a great cameo, the experienced head touching the ball 15 times in only 10 minutes in his final quarter appearance. Captain Nick Bryant won 4 one-on-ones, a single game high for the entire tournament. SA's best performer was arguably Adam Roque, working tirelessly around the ground with 10 forward entries, 6 rebounds and a game-high 4 intercepts, but there were no poor performers. Even Webster, who had the lowest point total of anyone who played 3 quarters or more, did his job very, very well with 5 goals. Now, before I launch into a more detailed look at each club and my all-star team, I'd like to clarify some limitations with my stat collecting. Only the finals were televised, which I must say was awesome, and again thanks to KO and Sportscast for not only hosting the games online, but having this idiot on for the role. Thank you so much. This meant, though, that the Lightning Carnival games not only had their stats manually recorded, but as there were simultaneous games across 2 courts, I could only do this for exactly half of the Lightning Carnival games. These stats, whilst largely accurate, are not precise, and since I left my notebook in Melbourne like an idiot, I can't double-check the admittedly very few mistakes that made it through, and my time on ground numbers aren't going to be super accurate for those games. That also means for some teams I missed most of those fixtures. I, of course, followed my SA boys more than any other team and endeavoured to catch at least 4 of the 7 games played by each other Div 1 side. I happened to catch 3 New South Wales games, but only 2 for the other Div 2 sides. This means their samples are highly incomplete. For honesty, here is the average end-of-competition positional rank of all teams faced for all teams that have data from games across the entire Lightning Carnival, if that makes sense. The Vixen WA had the hardest time of the random draw, and New South Wales do very well out of this, considering they on average went up against harder-than-average opponents. The big outlier is Queensland, who went against the 5th and 6th ranked teams once their own position is excluded, joining the RSL in being the only sides to play against lower than average sides on average for my stat samples. However, since the Lightning Carnival matches were half the length of the finals matches and each side played 2 full-length finals, my janky stats cover at least half of all teams' stats. All in all, every team has the equivalent of at least 3 full games worth of data to pick from out of a maximum possible 5.5. So realistically, I've got a pretty good spread overall. It's just I would have liked to have seen Victoria go up against one of the weaker sides and just sort of boost their numbers to match what SA were able to do. It was a building year for the Territorians. They gave the RSL and even WA a mighty scare, but met a few buzzsaw offences, particularly in the form of the Crow Eaters, who won 137-8 in only 2 quarters of play. I chatted to Zara Chapman, team manager and defender for the Thunder, and she explained that it's difficult for the NT to play against such high-quality teams with any degree of regularity, particularly as there's preventatively few player numbers at the moment to form a league that's a rival to the traditional footballing powerhouses. Still, they won themselves admirers by playing with a fine attitude by not letting results define them, which was best illustrated in the final Lightning Carnival game where cult hero Thomas Cook scored 2 final half goals to the delight of the inclusion team, which had swung by from their own very successful campaign to watch. I'm loath to pour through the numbers too much for the Thunder, as they were a fun and jovial unit whose only flaw was being a fundamentally less developed team than every other side, but as I'm obligated to, here we go. I'll get the scary numbers out of the way first. The Thunder turned the ball almost twice as often as SA with half the disposals. Their efficiency was in the 40s and they scored an average of under a point per minute with the same number of marks inside the forward zone all tournament than Yaz Hill had in the grand final alone. But there are some positives to focus on. Despite playing SA and Tasmania in my sample, they intercepted the ball more than Victoria did. They led the league in rebounds, placed second in spoils, and showed their spirit by leading in 1%ers, almost tripling WA's output, whilst having as many centre clearances as the Sandgropers. Oh, and when they had chances, they took them. They were 4th in goal accuracy. There's things to build on here. Standout players included James Chapman, who played every single minute of the NT campaign in a variety of roles, the basketballer impressing with his goal nous, Adam Smark, who was actually one of the more effective rucks in the competition and a very capable player in his own right, and the defensive duo of Zara Chapman and Alison McGowan, the latter of whom managing to secure an All-Australian jersey, so fantastic for them. James Chapman won the team's MVP, and based on StatFeeder and TVOP, I am inclined to agree. He gets my unofficial and much less important award. The RSL side always faces a unique challenge in that they assemble a squad from all across Australia who generally have little to no experience playing alongside each other. This was telling in such a strong competition, as it took a few games for them to really hit their stride. Convincing wins over the NT and a narrow loss in the Lightning Carnival to New South Wales, having had a 20-3 half-time lead, showed their potential, but in the end the more unified and cohesive state sides were able to take it to another level. And that's reflected in the stats, the RSL having poor disposal efficiency and clanger numbers, and a lack of speed was evident in their low tackle numbers. But they were brave and committed, placing top 3 in 1%ers and being one of only 4 teams to 10 intercepts per game, keeping in mind one of their half games was against freaking SA, so that's pretty good. Still, there were stars studded in this side. Wayne and Danielle Hale, premiership players for the Eagles in SA, provided a stable base, whilst Central District's James Barker held down the back line and, as usual, took a lot of beating. Sam Moraldo from Collingwood was the main route to goal, with Queenslander Stephen French also providing when called on, ending the comp by scoring 8 against Queensland, including 4 in the final 5 minutes. They had some handy role players rotate around as well. Their All-Australian representative was Danielle Hale, who wouldn't have been my pick. If you're selecting a forward, I probably would have gone with Moraldo or French, but it gave the SA contingent another reason to cheer, so I'm not complaining. My RSL MVP is harder to determine, and not least because I missed the majority of their Lightning Carnival matches. Wayne Hale was 5th in overall StatFeeder points, whilst their TVOP leader was still Hale, but by a more minuscule margin over Moraldo. I think Hale still claims it on overall contributions, as while the forward line was noticeably different without Moraldo, the team relied on Hale as a tent peg kind of player. The Northerners were 3rd in the competition they hosted last year and were hoping to continue the momentum, but a stronger SA side and a determined WA squad proved too much for them this time around. They performed in the matches they needed to, but inefficiency cost them in their Carnival fixture against their traditional Origin rivals, whilst the return fixture that decided the Div 2 final, goal kicking, was their Achilles heel. Actually, it was a blight all comp. They shot at under 50% and spilled the ball out of play more than anyone. But they tackled well, led everyone comfortably in intercept marks per game, had more forward entries than Victoria, and kept their noses pretty clean besides. I really liked watching this team, what with their really nice squad balance and multiple different lineup looks, and I could see how they finished so well last year. Zach Carlson and Josh Boyle presented a dilemma as to which one of them would walk away with the side's MVP. Carlson won it in the end and won an All-Australian slot as well, likely due to his versatility. One of the leading goal scorers per game from my Lightning Carnival sample, he was also a fantastic defender. Boyle did great work around the ground as a mid and pinch hitter forward, but his ruck work left a bit to be desired if I absolutely had to find a fault in his game, which in all other aspects was completely elite. Credit also has to go to Alison Mosby, who was a fierce presence in defence, and to Fernandez, who was just absolute fun to watch in his pinch-hitting appearances off the pine. Paul Letters and Lockie Steinort were also handy as positional utilities, and Dan Scott, if his conversion had have been just a little bit better, would have been their grand final hero, and even performed just behind the level of Ryan Smith, which is not a bad place to be at all. My Queensland MVP was a tough choice between Carlson and Boyle. If we're going on stat feeder, Boyle would win out handily, but like most counting metrics, it favours the midfielders generally. Turning to T-Vorp, Carlson was handy, but not significantly ahead of Boyle, and so, yeah, he'll claim my gong as well. It's almost like these coaches are really good at picking out their own best players. We seem to agree so far. Now for New South Wales, and to get a more detailed perspective of their team and their system overall, I decided to have a chat to Toby Popple, their captain and one of their star players, to get a little bit more insight into how everything works. So here it is. This is a terrible transition. What am I doing?
How are we doing, everyone? I am here with Toby from the New South Wales team, and he's proven to be a bit of an unsung star in the competition this season, so great to have you on board. I'm talking.
Take two.
We have fun. So I brought Toby on board because obviously I don't really know a whole lot about the New South Wales system, and I thought it'd be great to have someone who's experienced with wheelchair footy in New South Wales to tell their stories. So Toby, I suppose how'd you get started in the system?
First time I actually got involved at all was Nationals 2023. Here in Melbourne. I got a phone call from the head coach and he said, look, I've got your number off a friend of a friend. Are you interested in playing? I went, oh, what's AFL like in a wheelchair? What's that look like?
What's AFL because you're from New South Wales?
Well, hey, honestly, I've seen about 3 games of AFL before that, and it was Sydney Swans grand finals, so that's about it. But they're few and far between with them. But
I was going to say, I'm an Adelaide fan, we don't know what a grand final is anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely like that at times, isn't it? But so I got involved then. Hit me up and sort of asked me what my skill level was and where I sort of see myself in our team. And I didn't actually get to make it to the trials that year. And he sort of said, well, this person has played with us before and I know his skill level. You know him from your wheelchair rugby league background. Where do you fit with him? And I said, well, this is my skill set, this is his. We're probably pretty comparable players, just different skills. He said, mate, if that's where you're at, I'd love to have you on board. So I ended up making the team without trialling, which wasn't necessarily fair to some, but it worked out well for him in the end. But yeah, I played down there, and first time actually holding an AFL ball outside of a schoolyard was in that game. The very first game, I'd never grabbed one before, and he said, mate, we'll throw you in the backs and see how you go. So I ended up, I think I played 3 or 4 games in the backs. So I said, mate, I'm a wheelchair rugby league player. I know how to kick a footy. Give me the footy up in the forwards. So he put me in the forwards. I ended up getting leading goal scorer in Division 2 and made All-Australian that year. Still had no idea what I was doing by the end of it. But if you push hard enough, you make the right leads and kick a few goals, it works out for you.
I suppose with the system, because there's no dedicated leagues at the moment in Sydney, is that correct?
Yeah, so there's no dedicated leagues. What we sort of do is we have multiple hubs sort of scattered around New South Wales. So I think next year we'll move up to 9 hubs, which is awesome. So at the minute I think we're about 4 or 5,
yep.
And the plan is to have 9 in place sort of this time next year. Have them all in full swing and have more competition for spots, which will be exciting.
Excellent.
Basically there's hubs and we do country championships.
Yep.
So Sydney will do their own, and then regional New South Wales will do one with Canberra. So Canberra has a hub, Wagga has a hub, Temora, and there's a couple others sort of scattered throughout Sydney. Newcastle's coming in next year, so that'll be good. But once all the hubs are set up and established, we'll look to do a bit bigger of an event. But at the minute, it's sort of we'll have a round in Wagga, a round in Canberra, a round in Temora, and then we'll sort of all travel to each other, have a bit of a game, try and build up the confidence level of all the players that are starting to develop skills, and just try and hone the skills in a little bit. And then Sydney do the same thing with their hubs up there. So, and then this year we had our first sort of state championships. We all met in Goulburn, which is pretty central for everyone, and met in Goulburn there, and we all got together and we had 4 teams compete there. So everyone sort of jumped in a team and we split them up, trying to get the talent a bit across, so one team didn't dominate too much. But we played there in Goulburn, and that was our state championships that acted as our trial for our state team. So it's definitely a massive step to where we have been in the past and moving in the right direction.
Solid. So I hear the Giants and Swans have had sort of involvements with the wheelchair scene.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So how's that work?
So basically they've come on board and got a heap of jerseys and that for us. So when we played at our state championships, we had 2 Giants teams, 2 Swans teams. I know the Sydney-based players get a lot more of that than what the country do. Which that's sort of how these things work, unfortunately, but where they are is where they are. So Giants do a lot within the communities, within regional areas, but wheelchair hasn't quite reached there yet, so hoping that comes in the future, but we'll work with what we have for now. But as far as their input, they're providing different materials that we can use to help increase the sport. I know there was a bit of funding in that here and there, just to try and help with court hire and all the stuff that people don't really think about behind the scenes. It's all well and good to have players that want to jump in and play, but if you don't have volunteers, you don't have funding, you don't get anywhere. So the funding helps, and I know there has been players from the Swans and Giants come down and help out with events.
Oh, nice.
So I couldn't tell you the players' names because I'm not an AFL person, unfortunately.
Sorry, you're swearing them to secrecy.
No, definitely
Callum
not.
Brown's come down to me to sign an NDA.
I'm like, I don't know who anyone is, so unless they're from my area, it's I've got no chance of telling you what their names are.
Best player from New South Wales doesn't know what footy is. So.
I'm bad, mate, I'll tell you.
You live up to the stereotypes, I think.
I know who Toby Green is, he's got the same name as me.
Oh, yeah, fair enough. Well, there's plenty of Tobys in Sydney, actually. Or Toby McMullen, if he's still there, I don't know, fact check for me in the future. If he's not, this gets cut.
Well, a lot of us sort of, I think we've got 5 players in our team that have rugby league background. So it's one of them things like, we don't fully understand the sport and we're all learning at the same time. So to be able to achieve what we are while learning the sport and only having one person who fully understands, that's our biggest thing is like once we understand the sport and we sort of live it a bit more, like a lot of these, your Vic, your Taz, SA, WA, they live and breathe AFL. A lot of our players, it's their first time holding the ball. So when you have that into perspective, like, our job is to get out there, rustle some feathers and be competitive, and I think we're doing that pretty well, but we want to be better. We want to be one of them teams that people don't want to play. That's sort of our goal for the next couple of years.
And so might be going to get there too.
I just don't know, I really do. I know like our state AFL and wheelchair programs, they really want to have it as a highlighted event that they want to host. They want to bring it, whether it's Sydney, whether it's bring out rural a little bit somewhere. They want to bring it to New South Wales and showcase the sport for what it is. And it's not a sport that's massive for AFL as far as the top level goes. You do have the Giants and Swans, obviously, but it's not a Melbourne or a WA, South Australia that has multiple teams. But they want to bring the sport there, and the only way for that to happen is by us making achievements throughout the sport and making it a place where people go, you know what, New South Wales deserve to host this event, and we need to do that for them to repay them for what they've given us. We'll see how we go.
Yeah, well, best of luck with that. So thank you for coming on.
Appreciate it, mate. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, well, thanks for yours.
We're here together.
Cut to the studio or whatever the equivalent is. I don't know what the
We never do we?
Their competition was exceptional, coming within a Hayden Orber spoil of beating Victoria and only losing one game to a Division 1 side by over 30 points. As far as stats go, they were wild, seeing the third most ball thanks to their strategy of generating the best possible chances in front of goal, which admittedly was soiled somewhat by a sub 60% shooting accuracy. But at one stage they had the third most marks in the forward zone despite lacking a true tall forward, and entered the forward zone as often as anyone bar SA. They were second in rebounds and contested wins, having the best contested win percentage, and didn't use the ball too poorly. Funnily enough, they actually led the comp in handballs or flick passes, typical rugby state, and also led the league in tackles and intercepts. They did a lot of stuff right in this comp, and honestly, watch for them to enter Div 1 for the first time next year. Their strengths were their versatility in their game plan and their even level of contribution. Matt Hannon won their MVP, but it could have been any of their tall ace in Chris O, their switch-hitting midfield defender in the delightfully alliterative Brad Burns, or the wunderkid forward in Jai Kumba. Solid contributions from Richards, Simpson and El Hadj Yusuf, as well as an unfortunately truncated but terrifically productive tournament from Popple due to injury, meant that this side was always a factor, and the improvements made in their infrastructure are already readily apparent. Losing Popple, though, only gave chances for El Hadj Yusuf and Kumba to shine, and they'll be big names for the next few years at least. Everyone made contributions, which made their victory all the more glorious, and they were all great people to chat to. Really great spirit around the program. If I had to pick a best player though, which I've sort of consigned myself to doing, I'd have four main choices. Toby Popple really was amazing in the opening game, so much so that despite a grand final appearance that started on the Pine, he still walked away 15th in average Dream Team points and top 20 in StatFeeder as a forward defender. However, in terms of T-Vorp, two Rams outscore him, Hannon and Burns, with O'Brien leading their StatFeeder scoring but having four mids above him despite finishing 7th, so his T-Vorp suffers. Apologies to Hannon, but my MVP goes to Burns. I just loved watching his dash and drive from the back line, and he was able to perform both down back and in the middle very, very well. Just that extra bit of versatility that snags it over Hannon, although he absolutely deserved their MVP by my numbers. After making the grand final last year and being ahead in the match that decided second place on the table at half-time, fourth has to be a disappointment for the Apple Islanders, but in the end their results and stats sit them roughly where they finished. My sample did, however, only take in games against higher-rated opponents, so read into that what you will. They were very solid defensively, though, with only Victoria able to really power through them, but they made the most spoils of anyone and intercepted more of the ball than Victoria and WA. That's very solid. Brad Fisher won their MVP, and seeing as he was in my all-star side before the final day, I can absolutely see why. Playing both up front and down back, he was an imperious figure who was one of the better one-on-one players, as well as being in the top 20 scorers, disposal getters, forward presences, and rebounders. Awesome work. So much so that as a true utility, he places in the top 16 in T-Vorp twice. Needless to say, he gets my MVP too, but it's fairly close. Josh Christian performed well as a midfielder all tournament, and I mean all tournament. He only got rested twice whilst I was watching. His brother Alex got more bench time, but even so was 5th in average goals and had some tremendous on-the-move finishes. Mitch Stretton was every bit as good as Fisher defensively and in StatFeeder, although I gave Brad a -50 for the first yellow card I've ever seen, so that kind of affected things somewhat. Jack Anders was a handy forward as well, while Brodie Tinning did a capable job filling in where needed. It was a good team with some core balance, but needs a couple of extra hands just to make that next step. It was a weird tournament for the WA side. They jutted along for a while, found their stride on day 2, only to lose star midfield defender Amber Merrick to a broken hand. Despite this, they managed to combat fatigue to take SA the distance in the semi and outlast Tassie to take 3rd. They had 2 big statistical Achilles heels. The first being they got less of the ball than everyone bar the NT and used it no better than anyone else when they actually had it. The second was their goal kicking. The Swans had 23 shots per 40 minutes, as many as Victoria. Victoria didn't shoot amazingly, but still, their 16.5 goals per 40 minutes dwarfs WA's 11. In games that I watched, they shot at 46.81%, being only better than the RSL, and even that was marginal. Zilioli was really handy as a defensive style of midfielder, although he was powerless to stop his bigger rivals in the ruck, but this team was a two-man show. Big Ben Moncrief stamped his name on the competition and actually averaged more goals than anyone in the games that I watched, but I believe time around the ground may have cost him the overall gong. I don't know who actually won that. His inaccuracy might have cost him as well if he didn't win it, kicking 39 goals in eligible games that I watched, but 24 25 behinds along with that and a further 8 shots with no score. To make up for that though, he got 35 touches per 40 minutes. Naturally he blew everyone else away for Dream Team points, but StatFeeder values the wheelchair game properly and here he was only 4th. Above him in 3rd and atop the overall TVORP leaderboard though is my and the real life WA MVP in Ben Green. This guy was so much fun to watch, making the most of an early discovery that the usual rule in which the ball may not travel in one pass across all 3/3 didn't apply at this tournament. He started launching intercontinental ballistic missiles for fun, leading all comers in rebounds and forward zone entries with daylight 2nd and indeed 3rd. He also touched the ball way more than anyone else, getting 45 touches per full-length game and being one of only 4 people to get 1 touch per minute, or the Roki zone as I like to call it, although Adam himself just missed out on getting it this time round. He was also 2nd in contested wins, but interestingly not top 20 in defensive acts, which is a bit weird, but that doesn't matter because he got 10 VORP. 10! Adam Roki didn't manage that in the State League. Holy hell! Despite getting closer than anyone's ever come to dethroning Victoria since COVID, this still feels like a missed opportunity for SA. 7 from 7 in the minor rounds, and look, I've had enough this year with my teams topping their division only to go out like chumps when it matters. Actually, that's not fair, actually. The SA in this tournament fought very hard and arguably could have won the final if not for a late fade-out. They did everything they could and got closer to Vic than any other grand finalist of the last 4 years. They had more of the ball than anyone and used it as well as anyone. They were among the best defensively in both contests and keeping scores low, and were the top scoring sides themselves by being the most accurate by a long way thanks to their tactic of working the ball around up front and not bombing it from fucking Frankston like most teams. Looking at you, WA. Now, if you're a regular Wheel Footy head, then the SA names will be very familiar to you, and Stewie Webster was the feel-good story of the tournament, emerging from the shadow of the much more fancied Smythe and Jarrett, who'd scored 220 sample goals between them, to take top scorer for the tournament, asterisk, as well as the SA MVP and an All-Australian jersey to boot. Adam Roki didn't take his usual Dr. Manhattan form, but still led StatFeeder scoring and was the top midfielder by VORP. Cooper Spillane was absolutely immense anywhere he was played, and Sean Whitbread was a revelation as a roaming tall back, well outside his usual home as a high half forward or aggressive midfielder. Smythe was the buried lead, but still a top 15 player in all main respects, and the 3rd highest scorer in matches I saw per game. Wheel Footy favourite Jake Billsborough and fellow rotation in the backline Chris Simpson both performed well above average when called on, with Billsborough tearing NT to shreds in particular, with 13 forward zone entries in as many minutes on the field. Now, Wheel Footy heads are probably asking about one name. TJ, Trevor Jarrett, the SANFL MVP who kicked more than anyone in wheelchair footy at all this year in 2025. Sadly, he was a bit part player this time around thanks to the wealth of forward talent and was the only SA player in the negatives. Amongst the strong field of SA talent, I share the same opinion as SA coach Giang Dan. My MVP is Stewie Webster. He was the deadliest forward in the comp and only finished marginally behind Roki in TVORP, which is testament to how good the typically stat-home forward's craft was. And our winners, Victoria. Was there ever any doubt? Actually, yes, when they were trailing New South Wales with 2 minutes to go on day 1. But the coach in paddles pulled an inspired coaching move by chucking former 100-goal forward Ryan Smith into the centre on day 2, and from there the Vics were back to their imperious best. Thanks to Smith, the Vics dominated the ruck and used that to generate almost as many clearances as SA. They didn't really match them across the board, but to be fair, SA did play an NT side that they beat by 130, and I didn't catch the Vics effort against them, so in reality these sides were likely far more even. That applies to star power. Their forward line was insane, led as usual by the wunderkind that is Seb Welsh, the Victorian League Grand Final BOG, being the only man to get so much as 3 goals and 3 assists per 40 minutes, by getting at least 50% more than that threshold. He also had 33 touches a game and chipped in down back against SA, winning 2 one-on-ones. He was 2nd in TVORP and the leading forward, which, considering the names and feats that I've mentioned already so far, is a hell of an effort. He was assisted by a motley troupe of highly entertaining forwards. Caleb Logan, record holder for most goals in a wheelchair game with 26, didn't feature much in my sample, but Yassine Hill did. Hollywood got bags as big as his personality and may have scored 20 in the semi if not for getting yanked at half-time with 7 to his name. Anthony Perito entertained young and old fans alike with the longest shots in the game, literally able to score from anywhere, while Ben Yankovsky did nice things in short cameos. None of them got Vic's MVP though. That went to the skipper in Nick Bryant. His 3.21 TVOR probably doesn't match the other side's MVPs, but Bryant was dependable, reliable and a fantastic leader, and his top 4 finishes in disposal efficiency and one-on-one wins really helped that. The St Kilda triumvirate was completed by Smith, whose ruck work was top ranked in ruck effectiveness and went a long way towards securing victory number 4 in a row for Victoria. However, his TVOP suffers as the result of A, starting out as a full forward, and B, simply not getting as much of the ball as his fellow mids, getting half of Roki's average touches. Sometimes TVOP doesn't tell the whole story, but his stat feeder score is pretty good. But none of them get my Victorian MVP, which goes to a man who didn't even lead TVOP for his team or position. But Hayden Orber was incredible. 43 disposals per game as a backman, 4th in defensive acts, 2nd in rebounds, 3rd in forward entries, 8th in assists and 10th in intercepts. Crazy numbers, and he saved the Vic's bacon against New South Wales with a last-minute spoil on the goal line, plus getting BOG honours in both of their finals. He's a big game performer, and to him, every game is a big game. So that's each team covered. Let's now get to what has become a bit of a staple here of the Wheel Footy series, the All-Star team. Unlike the SANFL weekly teams, I'm not limiting myself to classification points, just picking the best players I can. And I'm also not limiting myself to the competition's All-Australian side limitation of having to pick one player per team. I won't get into my feelings about that system. It's not good. But here's my picks for the overall best performers, starting with the bench. I picked the 5-strong bench as per the AA team and tried to mirror it by selecting the same amount of attackers, defenders and mids. But my bench is very versatile and harder to pick than the starting 5 by a long way because the depth of quality is just so deep. The easiest bench pick was Ben Moncrief, whose accuracy and 0 goal assists limits him to the bench and not the field of play, but what a tournament he had besides. The other forward was more of a toss-up. Jamie Smythe narrowly misses out as I already have a couple of roaming forwards here. I've opted for Tassie's Brad Fisher, who did a fine job up front and an even better one down back. Continuing the swingman theme, my 2 bench defenders both also averaged around 3 goals per game in Cooper Spillane and Queensland's Zach Carlson. Carlson's one-on-one numbers just enough to lock down that place over Brad Burns or Matt Hannon, both from New South Wales. My spare midfielder also took shifts all over the ground in the massive Josh Boyle, who took more marks and had more intercepts than anyone. He also got nearly 6 assists per game for the 6th placed Queensland side, which is incredible. Now my starting 5. Down back we have our most valuable player in the tournament in WA's Ben Green and my grand final MVP in Victoria's Hayden Orber. As he did all season in my sample teams of the week, Adam Roki, of course, holds down the starting midfielder spot, while Stuart Webster makes it 3 SA players in the team. I swear I'm not biased with his spot in the forward line. The final spot up front goes to the young phenom in Seb Welsh, who did absolutely everything right. 22 marks per game he had as a forward. 22 marks. Not even Trevor Jarrett got that to that level in a 120-goal season, which is insane. And we also have to name a coach. So WA's gaffer got the nod in the official team, and while he did well with a skeleton squad, my nod goes to a more left field candidate. Both coaches in the grand final did well all tournament, but I'm giving the nod to the New South Wales coach. Danny visibly led the team effectively. Their game plan was top-notch. Victoria and SA both had their worst games against New South Wales, which is a huge step for the program. They'll be contending for Div 1 next year with him at the helm, I have no doubt. So, that is it. This was a bit of a long one, but it was a massive tournament. It was so fun to be a part of. Thanks again to Ozzy and Bailey for getting me on the KO coverage. That's been a dream. That's a bucket list item to be on a KO call, like a nationally sort of broadcast call. That's just ridiculous. I still can't believe that happened. If you want me again next year, I will be there. Yeah, I'll be there guaranteed. But so Wheel Footy for the next phase of what it is, so I'm going to be branching it off into its own thing. I'm going to try and get it on Instagram and TikTok as well, try and really grow it and grow the awareness for disabled sports. I'm chatting with one of the SA inclusion lads, actually, Alex, if you're watching, hello, to try and cover a couple of inclusion games next year as well. That's another entirely different sort of form for disabled athletes to be able to participate, so that's going to be fantastic as well next year. Plus, hopefully, I'll be on the field in a wheelchair game next year if we can line that up. So there's a lot of cool things to look forward to next season. So follow Wheel Footy if you haven't already. That's going to be our new venture. Won't replace any of the stuff I'm doing on the main channel. I can't believe I'm I can't believe I'm branching into a 2-channel system. This feels like I'm doing way too much, but I'm so passionate about disabled sports, and particularly in the realm of football. Like, this should be a sport that anyone should be able to play. So I'm going to wrap this up. We've been here a long time already, and my camera battery's running out. I've got more stuff to film, so I will see you guys soon.